What's going on, folks? It's your main man, Rick the Dawn. Thank you for clicking on this video. You're in for a treat. I love the game just as much as you do. First, I would like to say thank you to everyone who's watched the video, watching the video, will watch the video, like the video, all that, because this is a small channel, if you can tell, and every like counts. Also, I'd like to invite every content creator to vidmondo.com. That's my video sharing website, much like YouTube, but a little bit more private, a little less restrictive. Please head over, create an account, and upload videos. Now, let's jump into Big Brother episode 12. A lot to unpack here. I have to say this was a very intriguing episode. I wasn't really suspecting them to go in so many different arenas, but in this case, that's exactly what they did. So I had to take notes. I know it's kind of tacky to look down at a notepad, but I like to keep my episodes nice and, on point. Now, I want to start off with Montys Backdoor playing the code. Now, if you watched my last episode recount and recap, you heard me throw a lot of shots at Monty because I just wasn't happy with his gameplay. But maybe I missed something the last episode because it appears, and you also see this soon as Big Brother comes on, Monty had the backdoor playing in motion the entire time. I'm not sure if they pulled that from the last episode or from the live feeds, but what I was able to see was, okay, Monty's not crazy. Monty actually has the intentions of putting up Nicole. Now something did rub me the wrong way. As you know, I'm a big fan of Michael, and I actually have Michael pinged to win this particular season. But Michael is throwing me off a little bit, and I can't expect anybody to think exactly like I do or play the game that I would play exactly. But surely you can have your favorites, and you can also be disappointed with some of the gameplay. Michael creating a top 3 within the Leftovers Alliance is just typical Michael. I mean, if you look at Michael's gameplay to this point, he's been in several alliances. And, it's starting to rub me as Michael is not the kind of person you want to build a relationship with. He's a person that appears to jump ship and, plan within a plan. He's a metacognitive thinker. And I respect that on so many levels, which is also why I'm willing to say I'm doubling down on Michael. Michael is not only proven himself to be a competition threat, but he's a strategic threat. And might I add, he comes across very gentle. He doesn't come across as striking. He doesn't seem to be a brute or anything of that nature. So, it just really adds to my admiration for the gameplay that Michael was doing. Now, picking Brittany and Taylor, I have to say this. I have to say, Michael, excellent job. You got two players, in my opinion, that Michael beats easily. First off, I don't see everybody who hates Taylor all of a sudden turning their whole mind around and voting Taylor to win, unless they're just really, I'll bit my tongue, really upset with Michael. But I still don't see that happening. I don't see people looking at Brittany and saying, I really admire your gameplay over Michael. Great job. So the fact that Michael chooses Brittany and Taylor of all people shows me that he is really a super fan. Or he knows exactly who to sit next to. And I would say they reverse for Brittany and Taylor. If I were those two young ladies, I would say, wait a minute, this he's playing us for fools. Let's show him who's boss. He's trying to sit down with us. Let's turn this thing around and vote Michael out. And I don't know why the rest of the house isn't thinking that. That's one of the first things I'm doing. Let's get Michael out. In fact, I'm thinking get Michael out after Nicole, because after Nicole, to me, Michael is the biggest threat left in the game, and you could argue, and I would argue that Michael's a bigger threat than Nicole. But I understand why they would target Nicole first. Brittany is sitting pretty in this game, and I always criticize Brittany because it's easy to criticize, right? She's a sweetheart. She doesn't really seem to come across like a competition threat. But I have to start giving her a little bit of due. I have to give her some roses because she is sitting next to one of the biggest anchors or the biggest shields in the game in Michael. And Michael just came to her and made a top 3. Now, I would say that Michael is the beneficiary here. But if you want to really get technical, if at some point, maybe top 4, if Brittany makes her moves the correct way, she's going to get Michael out the game. In fact, she should be the one that does it, that pulls the trigger on Michael. And if so, she'll be credited with taking out the biggest player in the game. In fact, I would hope that Taylor and Brittany are having those mental discussions, because that's what needs to happen. But without question, if I'm Taylor or Brittany, I cannot go to the top 3 with Michael. And then what's funny is because within the episode, it comes across as Brittany and Taylor being okay with this decision, as if, yes, this is a good move. And maybe the point is they are within the graces of Michael, and that's a good place to be right now. But as the game starts to progress to the end, I don't see this as being advantageous for either one of those two individuals. Monty, oh my gosh, he makes a critical mistake in the speech. This is just my personal opinion. I'm a strategic person, so if I'm in the game, I'm leaning more towards strategy. And Monty does something that, initially I thought was a really dumb move, but then I started to think about it more and I start to reflect on it more, and I said, okay, maybe I get it. But during the nomination replacement speech, he tells, or was it the no, during the nomination speech, he tells Alyssa and Indy that they are not his actual what did he call it? They're not his picks to go home. They're more or less like pawns, or they're trying to backdoor somebody. And I'm trying to figure out to myself, who tells the house that they have a backdoor plan? And I'm trying to think. I went back to my big brother mentor Rolodex, and I said, has there ever been a time when players openly talked about backdooring somebody? From the seasons that I've watched, backdooring somebody was this secret thing that you didn't really want them to know. But the fact that Monty blurts out that he has a backdoor plan to the entire house was terrible gameplay. Then, and it was at this moment that I realized, oh, okay, Monty's still in character. And God bless his heart. But Monty's still in character. He still thinks that everybody thinks that he wants to go at Taylor. So that's when it made sense to me. I said, okay, that makes sense. Perhaps he's trying to get the house to believe that he actually is gunning for Taylor, and that, if he's being consistent with the prior weeks, that's not any kind of news. Everybody knows that Taylor is supposed to be the number one threat to get out the house. So he's just following suit. But the problem is he doesn't necessarily follow that terrible gameplay speech with action, because you can find him throughout the episode, and I'm sure you can see it on the live feeds. You can find him next to Taylor several times having kumbayas. And then there's one point in the game when they're all the leftover members are in the big brother head of household room. And I'm like, wow, good job, guys. I don't have any context in terms of what time of day this is, but I'm thinking to myself, is this like, it feels like this is a daytime situation because everybody's still looking pretty prickly. But I'm like, wait a minute. You all are in a secret alliance, and you're all in an HOH room right now, and everybody outside of the alliance is not. You would have to be insane not to know that there's a alliance going on here. And then also the fact that Monty blurts out that he has, bigger fish to fry, or, bigger threats to get out the house. You want to be by yourself, or at least you don't want to be with the person who you're indicating that is the threat. So I don't know if I agree with Monty blurting out he has a backdoor plan. Bad move in my opinion. Now, what gets really interesting is how evil the Leftovers Alliance is becoming. And of course, they wouldn't see themselves as this, but I think that the editing in Big Brother is starting to play with the viewer's mind a little bit. I always give credit to the editors. They always do a great job, but I think they're starting to play with the minds of people like, hey, you're rooting for the Leftovers, right? Here's some of these things they're saying. And you can hear several times, like I think one of the funniest things that stands out is Kyle saying, or at least they're all talking about Daniel having a part in getting out Nicole, his best friend. And they all seem to be just like salivating at the idea of doing this. And I just couldn't help but feel bad for Daniel for the first time ever. Like, wow, nobody knows. Well, I should say Daniel does. He's the only person that doesn't know. This guy's just like playing a clueless game right now. But he is certainly going to be surprised if the leftovers plan goes through as planned. Now, they show you several times throughout the episode of the leftovers just like having a giggle, having a laugh about possibly having Daniel play a part in evicting his best friend, his alliance member. And it's hilarious because I think Kyle said something like, I can't wait to see this happen. Daniel actually evict his own person. And that told me like the leftovers are officially the evil alliance. And I say that very, very, timidly. I don't think that they're really going that far within the evil spectrum, because obviously they're trying to save Taylor, which is a honorable thing. But certainly they're all for blood. They're not playing nice. They're not playing by the traditional good guy code, because they're doing something that I would argue is pretty vindictive. It's not much different from what Nicole was trying to do to Taylor, which is, buddy up with her and try to get her out, in a backdoor scheme. Essentially, that's what they're doing. The leftovers alliance is doing the exact same thing to Daniel. So, you can't get mad at one side and not the other. So I'll just say fair play across the board. Now, I will say this episode really showed me something. It showed me that Kyle is indeed the weak link of the Leftovers Alliance. Now, we know that Michael, Taylor, and Brittany have created a hidden alliance, but I don't see them as a weak link, because I think Michael said within the episode that he plans to get, that big three, or the three that they just formed. He plans to break off with that three once they get to final 7, which I have to say is a smart move. If you're in a alliance that's more than, I would say, 4 people, at some point you want to try to create an alliance within an alliance. So I'm not mad at Michael for doing that. In fact, I think they all should consider doing that. But at the same time, I still see Kyle as being the weak link because he is romantically in love, involved, what have you, with a player that is not in the alliance. Now, I think the leftovers are trying to do the same thing that the Cookout Alliance did the season prior, which is have some kind of circumference or some other player outside of the alliance that they can use as a buffer. But this seems like more than that. Xavier, if you look at like season 23, Xavier, and all those, the Frazier fella, all those players, they were aligned with someone, but you can tell that the alliance and the game came first. In this case, I'm not sure that's the case. I think Kyle actually appreciates and loves Alyssa at this point. He's talking about her in a way that is just so adorable. It's like he's in love with this young lady. I don't think that he's gonna say it, but I'm a guy, and I've had these type of googly eyes before, and I'm starting to sense that Kyle is in love here, and that is going to be a conflict of interest at some point in the game. And I will have to say, because of that, Kyle is the weakest link in the Leftovers Alliance, because you know how pillow talk works, right? You get a kiss, it's late, everybody's sleeping, and next thing you know, Kyle is spilling the beans and giving out way too much information, and Alyssa is smart enough to figure it out. And dare I say, if Nicole is still in the game, someone who can detect things and things of that nature, she gets that information from Kyle, she can revert it to Nicole, who can give it to Daniel, and now you got a big issue. And now you got people jumping ship from the Leftovers Alliance. So I would have to argue that Kyle is officially the weakest link within the Leftovers Alliance because he has a conflict of interest. Now, they did go into the situation in which Alyssa does have a situationship back home. And I can't tell you how I feel about this because on one hand, life is life. Sometimes you're with people and you haven't really sealed the deal. And then life happens. You have to go into a Big Brother competition. I mean, it happens to everybody, right? And then she gets in there and she finds this guy who is just like Superman, for crying out loud. He looks like the biggest geek, but the guy's built. You take off the glasses, he's got Superman there. But the point is, she's starting. You can tell this is more of Alyssa's dilemma rather than Kyle. Kyle is just the innocent bystander. In my opinion, he'll be collateral damage. And I think he's a little over his head because these Big Brother romances, they always work. I'm not sure this is going to work. By this point, if you're following the traditional trajectory of a Big Brother showmance, it's already official by now. I mean, as much time as they're spending by this point, if you look at all the Big Brother relationships, by now it's official. And this is one of the few times that I can recount that it's not official yet. It's actually still questionable. And because of that, I would have to say that Kyle is making a huge mistake here. Once this game is over, they don't live in the same spaces. At least I'm not aware of that being the case at this moment. They don't live in the same state. And if she does have a situationship, guess what? That situation is going to pick up right back where it left off. Whoever's on the outside of the house, he's probably watching this like, this guy's a dweeb, and she's playing him to get further in the game, which I would argue is probably true. I'm not sure that I think Alyssa has genuine feelings for Kyle. In fact, I think she even alluded to that in this episode in which she says, if Kyle votes me out, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do whatever. And that tells me that she's using him as leverage. Kyle, at this point, I would argue that Alyssa could do anything, even vote him out, and he would still love her. I'm not sure that that's reciprocal. I think that Alyssa is only with Kyle for the sole purpose of his benefits and what he can offer in terms of protection. So I would have to say that they might have to consider the Leftovers Alliance. They may have to put him to the test and really see where his allegiances lie, because this week we didn't get that opportunity because Kyle made one of the dumbest moves in the game. But I'll get to that in a minute. Let's see and then you have another issue, and I don't know that the Leftovers Alliance is really understanding how big of an issue this is. It goes back to my prior point in being Kyle is the weakest link in the game. Several times throughout this episode, you will find separate, areas of the Leftovers Alliance having these conversations, and they're talking about getting Alyssa out. I mean, initially, before the veto competition happens, everybody's having this conversation about, hey, I should say, some of the alliances having this conversation saying, let's keep Indy and Alyssa in the game, and let's vote out Alyssa, and let's keep Indy for ourselves. In fact, Michael and Brittany want that more than anybody else in the group. And the fact that they're having those kind of conversations, knowing that Kyle is madly in love with Alyssa, tells me that there's some inner conflict within the Leftovers Alliance. And I'm going to just say it now. They don't go to Final 7. I just don't see that happening. I think maybe 5 of the 7 members make it, but I'm certainly not believing that all 7 make it. You have fractures within the alliance. The fact that Michael and Jasmine Is that her name? No, I'm sorry, I keep saying Jasmine. The fact that what's this guy's name? Michael and Brittany want to get rid of Alyssa, knowing how Kyle feels about her. And I don't believe at any point did they go and tell Kyle how they, what their plans. I can't remember that part, but whether they did or they didn't, the point is, knowing that Kyle has these feelings for Alyssa, why would you even consider that? I think at this point, Michael and Brittany are so in tune into their agenda that they're putting that agenda ahead of the Leftovers Alliance. And I think that's going to create some issues and some problems. I think even at one point, Monty talks about the possibility of keeping Indy and Alyssa on the block. I know it's just I don't know. I just think that it's going to create problems with Kyle, and I think Kyle is the weakest link. Now this group is incredibly short-sighted. Now, I have to say, this is one of the few times that I can remember watching Big Brother where I said, "What in the world? What is this? What is this alliance doing?" It seems like this alliance doesn't realize there's an end game. Taylor crying and being visibly upset about the possibility of going on the block and eventually being on the block. You see Taylor have a breakdown. It's like, Taylor, do you not understand what's going on? And maybe it's just me, but you trying to get out Alyssa, while is I get the move. I get it. Okay. I get it from some people's standpoint, but I'm talking about a move that benefits the entire group. It seems like this alliance is so short-sighted. They're worried about right now and not realizing that there's a whole game. It's a whole summer of gameplay left. So it's like, hey, Taylor, take this little bump and you'll be fine. You got a whole alliance behind you. Now, for me, when you don't trust your alliance, that is another inner conflict and another reason why I say the Leftovers may not be as strong as we think. Taylor's breakdown at the end of the episode tells me she does not trust this alliance on a subconscious level. Michael and Brittany's conversation shows me that they don't trust the alliance. Kyle's inner conflict with wanting to actually keep Alyssa shows me that they don't really trust the alliance. There's so much going on here, and I have to say this group is so short-sighted. Let me know in the comments. I see I got some people in here. Let me know in the comments, how do you feel about the fact that, do you feel like they're playing a good game? I feel like they're playing a short-sighted game. They're only focused on week by week by week. And, it depends on who you ask. That's a good decision. Me, I think it's terrible because I'm watching this whole season play out, and I'm just like, why are they not making this move? Why are they not making that move? So I don't know. It's just me. Next, I want to talk about the veto competition. It was a psychedelic theme, and I'm gonna be honest with you. My wife and I were having some tequila, and I was, watching you probably can tell I'm like all over the place. I was watching the veto competition, but I have to say it was cringe for me. It was very cringe. I looked at the animations. I was like, okay, back to the tequila. I'll just pay attention. So I wasn't giving my primary focus on it. It was just like cringe for me. I was just like, okay, this is not a good one. But I could be wrong. If you enjoyed the veto competition, give me a like. But I did not. I looked at it. The animation was kind of funny for me. I get it. And then they had to recite some things that they saw within I gotta watch it again. This is one of those things. Sometimes I'll go back and I'll DVR. I'll watch it on Amazon Prime, and I'll look at some things that I missed because I was like, Big Brother comes on right at prime time in my house. My wife and I are finally getting a chance to relax. But I'll have to say the veto competition was very strange to me. Now I have to say this, Kyle, what is he? Oh my gosh, this goes back to my point of saying that the Leftovers alliance is short-sighted. So we have a situation where Kyle is, battling for the veto, and everybody's battling for the veto, right? Indy and Alyssa are battling for the veto. And if I remember correctly, I do remember this part, Monty and his two teammates, Joseph and Terrence, are struggling, which is hilarious because they got more people to recount information and give information to Monty, and they actually don't do well at all, which I think says a lot about, Terrence and Joseph. I don't even know if I forget they play sometimes. And then you have Indy and Alyssa, and they seem to be playing very hard. And then, of course, you have Kyle and Kyle and Daniel, they're aligned. And Kyle wins the veto. Is it just me, or was Kyle supposed to throw this veto competition? The problem is, by Kyle winning the veto competition, now he has to actually remove Alyssa and Indy off the block himself when he could have thrown the competition. I was screaming at the TV while holding my tequila, like, do you see this? Why did Kyle win the competition? That's another point that tells me that he doesn't trust this alliance. There's fractures within the Leftovers alliance because Any other season with a strong alliance would have said, I'm going to throw this competition to Indy and Alyssa. Why? Because then Indy and Alyssa can take themselves down. And if Kyle, that shows me he's also not the strategic threat that I thought. He's an emotional player. Let's face it. He is somebody who's going to probably come through and win a couple physical competitions, but from a cognitive or a strategic standpoint, Kyle is not that. Okay, I said he was average. He might be just a little below because he doesn't throw the competition. You throw the competition, you don't have to go against your own alliance and take Alyssa and Indy off the block, which looks strange if you think about it. If I'm Taylor, I'm looking at Kyle very, very, I'm looking at his eyes. I'm trying to figure out what's going on because wait, you win the veto competition to take those two off and put me and Nicole up? You know how much Taylor didn't want to go up, which I thought was silly, but that's not the point. The point is Kyle could have easily had his cake and ate it too. He could have got rid of, I should say, he could have thrown the veto competition, got rid of Alyssa and Indy. They come down, and then Monty would have had to put up Nicole and Taylor. Smart move, would have been the best move ever, but he gets too emotionally invested and he makes the wrong decision. So I have to say that was a bad move. All right. Could have easily had his cake and 82. All right. And I have to say, throughout the episode, I saw many times in which I thought to myself, Alyssa is playing Kyle. And I've been in these situations before. Maybe we all have. We've all been in a situation where, we see somebody is very vulnerable. I've been in a situation where, I really like someone and maybe they don't like me as much as I like them. And easily they're playing both sides, if you will. They're playing me against this other person. And I have to say, Alyssa is definitely doing that. It's just pretty blatant. She doesn't outright reject this person at home. And I think at one point on the live feeds, I've kind of saw a couple screenshots on the live feed. She's actually, she kissed Kyle and then tells Kyle that it can't be that serious and that it's really just about the game. And Kyle is confused because he says, wait, even after the kiss? So Alyssa is definitely playing Kyle. Now, I've already talked about this, but I'll just briefly go over it again. Why are the leftovers so close in the house? They're always around each other. I just think that's a bad move. They're always in the same place at the same time. And there's one moment in the episode in which they're all in the HOH room all together. I think all of them except maybe Michael and Brittany. I'm going off my memory here. But certainly, I'm just thinking to myself, you got to spread out and perhaps hang with that secondary player or alliance that you have. They don't do that too well. Now, I think that Kyle, again, while the entire Leftovers alliance is playing a very short-sighted game, that is not more true than Kyle's gameplay. Kyle is so wrapped around Alyssa's finger. It's really, it's going to be detrimental to either his game or the Leftovers game. At some point, the Leftovers are going to start to see him as collateral damage and say, wait a minute, we're getting down to maybe the bottom 9. We might want to consider cutting our ties with Kyle because if we don't strike that way, then he'll probably galvanize Alyssa and whoever else is in the game and strike us. And I think that's what's going on, or that's possibly what could happen because Kyle, I think, has completely forgot why he got into the game. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he's actually in the game because of a showman sport. For me, I have to say that Kyle is certainly not focused on winning. He's definitely not focused on the Leftovers alliance. And that showed in the veto competition. Now, I did like the way that Monty started to cover all of his bases. He started to have conversations with just about everybody that mattered in the house. I think in particular, he's talking to Nicole and Taylor, trying to get their input on the game. And I have to say that, yes, that was the right move. He's still actually sticking to his guns and acting as if he doesn't really know what the rest of the house wants and what they want to do. And he's really talking to everybody. So I thought that Monty did a really good job. Now, he does something that's incredibly brilliant. And I'm really surprised I'm saying that because if you've watched my other episodes, I really criticize Monty. I don't like his gameplay. But he does something incredibly brilliant. And that is use reverse psychology on Daniel. I think he invites Daniel and Kyle into the room to ask them, hey, what do you want to happen? And Monty says, I want to keep the nominations the same. And because Daniel has such a lack of trust for Monty, he immediately says, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to trick me. And he convinces Kyle and say, hey, listen, Kyle, let's go ahead and use the veto on Alyssa and Indy. Let's use the veto on those two and let's take them off the block. And that should foil Monty's plan because Daniel thinks that Monty is trying to save Taylor, and that is why he wants to keep the veto nominations the same. Daniel thinks, wait a minute, we can use the veto, take Indy and Alyssa down, put Nicole and Taylor up, and we have the numbers to vote Taylor out because Monty and Taylor are in alliance. So from that standpoint, you have to know that the Leftovers alliance are alive and well. I just have my reservations. I'm a little concerned long term, but obviously they're still playing well enough that someone who's watching their every move still hasn't quite figured out exactly what they're doing. So I have to give the Leftovers alliance credit, and I have to give Monty even more credit because, you know, I was very critical. Go watch my other episodes. I have playlists that really just encapsulate the Big Brother episodes. But, you know, Monty, I criticized him a lot last week because I said, why are you putting Alyssa and Indy up? And it's weird because at that time, I don't watch the live feeds. I get a lot of flack for that. I'm always behind the curve. But he doesn't put Taylor and Nicole up, and I'm just like, what are you doing? But it's funny how it works out because by putting up Indy and Alyssa and then Kyle winning the veto, that's perfect. The only problem I have is Kyle not throwing it. What are you doing, Kyle? Throw the competition. Let Indy and Alyssa win. But anyway, because Daniel is the best player of all time, and he's the next, you know, he's the incarnation of Dr. Will, and Daniel is the smartest player on the in-house by far by a large margin because Daniel is so brilliant. He thinks that Monty's actually playing chess when he's actually playing checkers, and because Daniel was a chess player and he's so brilliant, he thinks like, hey, let's actually go against his plan and let's bring Alyssa and what's her name? Alyssa and Indy down. I always forget Indy's name. I forget she in the house sometimes. But let's bring those two down and let's put Taylor and Nicole up and let's get Taylor out of here. Can we just get this out the way? Daniel is no Dr. Will. And we also have to say this. I actually have to ask this question. And after this episode is done, I'm going to come right back and I'm going to do a couple more episodes. We're going to look forward to tomorrow's eviction, see what happens, who goes home. And I'm going to do another episode entitled, Did Daniel Make the Worst Move in Big Brother History? All right, so I'm not going to even go into that right now. I'll just post a question and encourage you to check out my other content. I'm going to record that next because that question at this point has to be asked, and I don't want to spoil all that I'm going to say in the episode now. So I'll say this. Thank you for watching. I know I'm a little all over the place. Look, I'm a fan of the game. I'm not a sports analyst or nothing like that. I have some tequila, my wife, my kids in the bed. So bear with me. But the point is, I love you all. Appreciate you all. Thank you for watching the small channel. I'll be right back.